Okay, we're going to make a start on this webinar brought to you by Birmingham Tech. And this webinar, we're covering the growth formula, building long-lasting, valuable relationships. This webinar is being kind of co-created by Purpose-Led Performance, our ScaleUp partners, and in collaboration with the NatWest Entrepreneur Accelerator. And Pam, I'm just going to ask you, because you're on the webinar, to say a few words about what the Entrepreneur Accelerator is and how people can get involved if they wish to.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yanis. And thank you everyone for joining. And it's great to see these collaborative events and everyone working together to help each other. So the NatWest Entrepreneur Accelerator, for those who don't know already about it, is a program that's fully funded by NatWest, designed to help support entrepreneurs, SMEs, businesses start, scale and succeed. We use those kind of words, hashtag power up, if we're really cheesy. And the idea is, the reason why NatWest do it is you want businesses grow and scale, because then that helps the ecosystem, which then we get reciprocally, we get that back in other ways in terms of relationships and collaborative partners. So at the moment, due to this thing called COVID-19, the accelerator hub that we have 12 across the UK, are currently closed. But we have a digital program running at the moment called the NatWest Entrepreneur Accelerator. All of the information is on the intranet if you just want to have a look. We've got a program called Business Builder, which is a dip in, dip out community type, Facebook type program. We have workshops as well. We have the Core Accelerator program, which has events such as an audience with events or events to help you kind of grow your business. And then we also have a next level program, which is the businesses that are really scaling or on a plus 24% year-on-year trajectory. So that's all I'll share for now, but if anyone's interested, please do reach out to myself, Pam Shima, or drop me an email, or have a look at the NatWest Entrepreneur Accelerator Hub. But thank you for the opportunity and really looking forward to today's event. Thank you, Yanis.
Wonderful, thank you, Pam. And it's great to be partnering with you on this event. A few housekeeping rules before we start. If I can ask everyone to remain on mute. And then if you've got a question, you can turn yourself off mute and ask the panel a question at the appropriate time. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce today's speakers. So we've got Kent Holland, who's based in the States, and it's 7 a.m. I believe over there, Kent. So thank you for getting up at the crack of dawn with your coffee in hand, ready to take part in this webinar. So I wonder if you can just introduce yourself and maybe kind of give a bit of an overview to Copper as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Giannis and Pam, and appreciate the opportunity to connect. Excited to spend my morning with you. So I lead our global sales team at Copper. By way of quick background, our sales team spans, in terms of our office locations, the United States, Canada, and the UK. But we do business around the world and have spent the better part of the last couple of years with Copper, really growing our go-to-market business. In terms of what Copper is, to provide some quick background there before we introduce my teammate Jake as well, Copper is a CRM platform, or a client relationship management platform, really focused on helping you as a business manage the vendor relationships that you have that keep your business going, and that certainly are then a lead into the deals that you work or the projects that you might deliver. The ways in which you make money really is the core of it. So within that context, spend a lot of time with our clients talking about how to build go-to-market motions, how to think about attracting the right types of businesses and delivering to those businesses, to your customers, in the right ways to build a successful and lasting business. So very excited to have the conversation today, and we'll get more into it, I'm sure, over time.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kent, and welcome on board. And then we've also got Jake Lindstrom, who is the UK executive. So Jake, you're not so much an early start for you, but thanks again for being part of it. Again, wondering if you could just give a quick intro to yourself and your background.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Giannis. So yeah, I've been with Copper. I'm an account executive here with Copper, based in the UK. I actually moved to the UK. If you couldn't tell from my accent, I am American, but I moved to the UK about 2.5 years ago to help launch Copper's EMEA office based in London. I was with Copper, actually started as a sales development rep, so kind of like the bottom rung of the sales organization, And then fairly quickly with the growth of the business, worked my way up into a senior account executive role. And I'm in my current role now within the London office. Been with Copper for almost 5 years now. Kind of been with the company through our hyper growth phase, and have worked with hundreds, if not almost thousands of our customers now at this point in time, helping them evaluate and really implement Copper into their business. So have a lot of perspective on what helps make a successful sales organization through my interactions and relationships with our customers, as well as from my own personal experience.
Fantastic, and really keen to hear some of those insights today, Jake. And Copper is an interesting organization, one of the fastest growing organizations in America. And some of those lessons and insights we're really kind of keen to hear about today. So I thought we could start with really kind of how you go about attracting and nurturing prospects and the right type of people into Copper, and your methodology around that. So Ken, maybe we can start with you on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think thinking about the beginning of your go-to-market motion is so important. When you think about attracting and nurturing, that really stems from the sales and marketing side of the house. I know a lot of the folks on the line are just thinking about how to embark on building a business or scaling their business potentially. It may be that sales and marketing is the same hat. It may be that you now are starting to think about multiple teams, but that relationship is really, really important when it comes to attracting and nurturing the right prospects. And so I can't overstate the importance of getting that right, because those two teams often do work at odds with each other, right? You may, as you get into some of the growing pains of a business, have heard marketing say, well, sales isn't following up on the right leads, or sales say, marketing isn't giving us the leads that we need to be successful. But I think a strong marketing and sales partnership will really help catapult you to success, particularly with the front end of your funnel. But when it comes to attracting and nurturing, that does tend to be something that typically falls within marketing. And I think there are a few important things that we think about as a company when it comes to making sure that you're attracting and nurturing the right types of businesses. The first is making sure you have a clear sense of who your ideal customer is, right? Sometimes we refer to it in shorthand as ICP. That's your ideal customer profile or your ideal client profile. Thinking about, who are the types of buyers, what's the industry, what's the company size where this makes sense, what challenges do they have that we're helping to solve, and constantly iterating on that. Because if you don't know who you're going after, right, you can have the best campaigns, you can really have great marketing collateral, but if it doesn't reach the right buyer, then it really doesn't matter. So it has to be the right message at the right time to the right person, and getting that right requires careful thought on who that right person is. And then once you've thought about that, you can actually start to architect around that ideal client profile. So the way that I think about it is sort of the customer you're going after is the foundation of the work that you're going to do. And then you can think about what message would resonate with them. How does that tie into the product? What channels can we reach them through? Are they, typically on social media, or do they tend to be, more maybe radio, or maybe you're able to get them through events or sort of community groups. And so you need to think very critically based on the person you're going after, the type of company you're going after, where you can reach them, and then just constantly iterating on that process. And I think as you get towards more of a scale up and moving towards a situation where you've actually had successful engagement to attract and nurture, and then you're starting to actually close business, everything that you're able to do as you move further down the funnel can then reinforce, I should say, the work that you're doing on the top end of the funnel. And so, in the business, the state of the business where we are today with Copper, what I see is Jake and I work a lot hand in hand on some of the big deals that he's working on out in the UK, and I'm working with the rest of our team as well. And what we see in terms of our ability to close and actually make customers successful then reinforces how we think about which customers we really want to spend our time on when it comes to the front end of the market. And so we're thinking with marketing about how we drive the right campaigns, the right channels, and have the right level of trust between sales and marketing to execute and understand performance as it goes through the funnel.
And I know we're going to touch on that a little bit later, but that trust element, Ken, is so important, right? The trust between the two departments.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about KPIs and some of the specifics of, and when I say KPIs, those are key performance indicators, some of the ways in which you measure the success of your attract and nurture strategy, the work that you're doing. But I do think, that's a key part of it, having trust across the teams and making sure that we each know what we're going to deliver. But I think that, a lot of times when you're starting at an organization, it's easy because you've got just a few folks that are working very closely together around this shared mission. As you grow, it can be more difficult to actually maintain that tight connection. The marketing team, the sales team may start to have separate cadences and separate weekly meetings. And so that go-to-market team, that unit starts to split up. And in some cases, as you start to have a customer success team and an account management function, that gets even further and further apart. And so I would say it just is really important in thinking through the ways in which you structure the team and the culture behind it, which we'll talk about, that you focus on keeping that trust between those teams. And it has to start with leadership. The two leaders of those respective organizations, sales and marketing, have to be very tight and work closely together, because their fates and their success is very intertwined, whether they like to admit that or not. And so this isn't really a competition as much as a collaboration, and that's the way that it needs to be thought about.
100%. Yeah, I know a lot of organizations that are successful really kind of put collaboration at the center of their business. So that's really good to hear. And Jake, kind of from your perspective, you've now understood your ideal customer profile. You've got to, of course, then reach out and engage with those prospects. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, really where I step in and help out is once marketing has generated what we call a marketing qualified lead, then I'm going to step in and engage with these leads. And the way that I personally engage with these leads is through a series of emails and phone calls. So that way I'm providing them the support that they need, either they're trialing or requesting a demonstration of our software. But of course, my main goal isn't just to engage with these leads, but once further from engagement is how do I make these companies as successful as possible by utilizing Copper software to help structure their go-to-market process and strategy. And the way that you're most effective in doing this, at least in my experience, is by having a real in-depth and personal understanding of their business and some of the key challenges which they're trying to solve for by implementing new software. Most folks don't go and look for CRMs just out of pure interest for software and technology, right? Is that they're facing something in the business, whether that they're preparing for growth and scaling and they need software to help them stay organized, or there's an underlying problem with the business. So by having a real key understanding of what's driving them to look at this software will help me inform the customer on what the best way forward for them to help solve those problems. And that really is, I think, resonates with our customers. One, because I'm not focused on trying to sell them the software. I'm more focused on understanding the problems at play. But that can be said for whether you're selling software or services or a physical hardware. First and foremost, you need to understand what is the underlying impetus of us even having this conversation, or if you're the customer reaching out or me reaching out to that particular customer, is that there's got to be a problem that we can help you solve and bring value to the table. And so the place where Copper is able to bring value, or where I can bring value, is my experience of working with, like I mentioned, hundreds of customers who are preparing for growth or trying to solve an underlying problem in their business by implementing software.
And I think that's what we've seen a lot of now, isn't it? The kind of role of a modern sales executive isn't necessarily to sell. It's to consult, to advise, to help that person in order to get them to the right solution. And that sometimes might not be your solution, right?
Yeah. Oftentimes, go ahead.
Please,
No, go ahead, Jake.
Oh, I was just saying, oftentimes, maybe not oftentimes, but you quickly build trust with your prospects when you can let them know up front that, hey, maybe we're not the right solution. And that's going to help out with twofold, right? First of all, it's going to save you personally time if you can identify and qualify up front that there's some underlying reason why it doesn't make sense for us to do business. Because the most frustrating aspect is when you get to the finishing line and you think you're in a really good place to win an opportunity, win a customer. And one of those key requirements you might have glossed over or didn't really take a deep enough look into becomes a blocker from you doing the business in the tail end. And that's going to waste not only your time, but your customers' time, and really reduce your credibility and your organization's credibility as being a true advisor. And ultimately, people are going to buy from you if they trust you. If there's not that trust and rapport and relationship along with your customer, you're really putting yourself in a hard position to win those customers. And on the other side of things, you're going to qualify those right opportunities, right? So if you understand from the very beginning what's going to make your customer successful and set you apart from the competition by having that true understanding, trust, and rapport with that customer, even if your product or services aren't quite on par with maybe some of your competition, because you've acted as a trusted advisor, you're much, much more likely to win that client.
That's very interesting. And it goes back to that old adage, people buy from people. They don't buy from organizations. And I think it's never truer than in this day and age. And one of the things I guess we touched on in the lead up to this webinar was really kind of the culture that kind of surrounds Copper, and how much time you've put into, crafting that culture and making sure it's the right one. And that's been a big part of your growth story. And I love this quote from the late Peter Drucker, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And I guess what we're not saying there is, it's all about culture, and it's nothing about strategy. Of course, you need a good strategy, but it has to start with culture. So I guess that leads us on to this kind of ability to create the right cultures and strategies within organizations. And Ken, I know you've had a lot of experience doing this, not just at Copper, but other organizations. So maybe we can hear a little bit of what, your tips are for doing that correctly.
Yeah, this is really interesting. And I think something I care deeply about. Interestingly, when I was earlier on in my career, in the early days of LinkedIn, I was spending time within their sales organization, and in reflection on sort of what they had really been able to figure out as they scaled from 100 folks on the team to 500 to 1,000, and I was there sort of between 2,000 and 6,000 employees, and now of course they're 10,000 plus. Culture just becomes so critical, right? And we talked about the ways in which, and maybe to take a step back, I guess the way I think about culture is the way in which people engage with each other. It's the way people engage at the organization. Some people like to say it's the way that your employee base will behave when you as the executive or the leader aren't looking. But it's the acceptable behaviors at your organization, and they're so critical. We talked about the internal behaviors and the way sales and marketing engage. Jake touched on the way that you engage externally, and I think your organizational culture is going to largely dictate the types of relationships that get developed, both within teams, but more importantly, cross-functionally at the company. And then it's also going to dictate the way in which your employees engage with third parties. I thought when Jake was talking about the sales process, something that it triggered for me, which is so important, is that you do have to make a transition in your sort of thinking from sort of being a self-serving, I need to sell and make money for myself and my company. You need to switch that on its head a little bit. I think the modern buyer, the modern business motion, particularly with software as a service, really aren't suited for that type of used car salesman approach. I think you have to be very sort of focused on making sure you have the right strategy in place. So you understand who your potential buyer is, you understand how you're going to get in touch with them, who on your team is going to actually then facilitate the sales conversation. But once you understand that, you have to then take your sales team and really think about them as a group of consultants and advisors, and set them free to go engage with the prospect with a focus on making that prospect successful. Because at the end of the day, in the software as a service business, if we don't make our customers successful, they're not going to come back and renew their agreements with us. And that can be a self-fulfilling prophecy down the line. Your business is not going to end up being successful, and you're going to have a real ceiling on your growth. To create a very sustainable business, you have to make sure you're actually providing your customers with what they want. And that starts with just turning off the sales person hat that you may typically have thought of or maybe started your career with, and really putting on more of a consultant hat and going in and helping them make their business successful. That's what we're here for. And as a team, we're lucky because we get to work on a product that is all around that. And so it's very actually nice to see the way that we work internally translate to how we help our customers. But I think that that's an important nuance that a lot of people miss. So, you mentioned like strategy being important, and I do think that that's critical, right? You have to have a strategy, but this concept that culture eats strategy for breakfast is great, and I think so important, and that starts at the beginning, and it's one of the toughest things to change. So the leadership team has to be focused on making sure that that's there. I did want to touch a little bit when we talked about strategy, sort of having laid out culture, on why, how I think about the strategy component of that, because I do think that's important. And the way that I think about that spans both sort of the marketing and sales component of building your business, is defining your go-to-market motion, or your go-to-market blueprint, as I'll call it. And I think as you've gone through the process of identifying your ideal customer, figuring out the motions you're going to engage with them on, and all of that, you've really got the underpinnings of it. But it's laying out the ideal flow that prospects will follow from the moment that you first identify them, through their engagement with your marketing team, with your sales team, and all the many channels that you have, your website, et cetera, and then through to their time as a customer. And I would say that the more mature you get, you should also actually have a very strong view as it goes towards your customer success team on what their engagement looks like with you during the whole lifetime. But as a part of that, I mean, for me, the strategy is making sure you have that right flow with clear objectives and swim lanes and deliverables for each team, right? Because if you're clear about what marketing will deliver versus what sales will deliver, you're clear on your go-to-market motion and how customers will move through that process, then you can start to get very crisp on what everyone's role is and how we're all working together. And that creates space for people to have trust with each other, because we understand what we're each responsible for. We can hold each other accountable, and we can work together to accomplish what we need to. And so I think there are many ways to do that. And certainly, again, working with a company like Copper has been so interesting. My background, having come from a company like Box, which was more in the content management space, and I mentioned LinkedIn. And I have a sort of a background in consulting for a variety of Fortune 500 organizations, but I think CRM is so unique because I live in that space every day, and technology can play a key role. A CRM like Copper can play a really central role in actually helping you map out your go-to-market process, have the right KPIs and data that you're able to gather around that process and manage that process. But I do just think that laying that out, having the right strategy is critical. If you do that and you have a culture of collaboration, you're going to find that you're really successful in accomplishing your goals.
And I imagine, Kent, the strategy you started off with at Copper isn't the one that you are utilizing now. It's constantly evolving. And how do you go about utilizing insight from, both internally within the organization, but also externally from customers to shape the strategy going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and every business is a little bit different. I think for us, it's really come down to a cycle of looking at what we see in the data and having that inform the decisions that we make about where to either provide more firepower behind specific parts of our process, or dig in and maybe we need to tweak different things. And I'll give some examples. So as we were looking at our business, which we serve customers that are in the startup to scale up sphere. Typically our customer base is between 1 and 500 or so employees. And so, we work really well with those smaller organizations, but for us to really engage, we have to figure out how can we provide the best level of support in a consultative motion as possible. And so we want to make sure that our team is able to spend time on the phone with our customers, doing screen shares, helping them figure out both how to use the product, but more importantly, how does that fit within their business? But we also know the realities of our business and the fact that we're trying to provide a solution to cost-conscious companies. So we want to provide it at the right price point. So there's a balance there from a business perspective. I think what we noticed is that we had certain parts of our go-to-market motion that were a little bit duplicative. And so about a year ago, we did a big body of work, and we're looking at our conversion rates at every step of the funnel, and noticed that after we were getting leads from marketing, we had a lot of leads coming in. We had a couple of different touch points that we had anticipated having with customers, but we were applying our own process onto them rather than letting an individual sales rep really dictate the process by working with the customer to understand what they cared about during their evaluation. And everyone evaluates technology a little bit differently. So we can certainly provide best practices, but we also need to be flexible. And so we ended up actually changing from a more complicated sales process to one that was more simplified. And we've seen great success in letting Jake really manage the UK business in the ways that he sees fit, versus having too many different touch points on our side from folks before a customer was able to engage with Jake. And so we simplified that, made a change in November of last year, actually, to the way that we guide prospects through our flow, with a focus on making sure that our sales team, that folks like Jake, are able to actually connect with customers more quickly. And that's had a big impact on our conversion rates. And so without spending more on marketing, we've been able to actually improve our own business objectives. But really what it starts with is thinking through, how can we improve our customers' business objectives? And so I think thinking in those terms is really important. And we've gone through just continuous iteration. It almost seems on a quarterly basis of thinking about where in our process do we have opportunities for improvement. And that shows up in both, the conversion rates. It shows up in the ways that our customer surveys are coming back. I mean, there's all sorts of places you can look for improvement opportunities. But I think taking that mindset to always improving your strategy is certainly the way that you're going to be able to continue actually improving your customer outcomes.
I really like that freedom within the framework. So you've got to have a strategy, but also it can't be too rigid, not to allow for people like Jake to be able to kind of engage with customers in the right way. And I guess, Jake, you're at that other end where, Kent set out the strategy. Now you've got to deliver on that. So how do you go about measuring the right things? How do you go about kind of focusing on those conversion metrics and ensuring that you're delivering the right thing for the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So, me being obviously in the sales role, what I'm most focused on is how can I convert as many of what we call our marketing qualified leads, which marketing is generating, that kind of meets parameters that fit within Copper's ideal customer profile. And how can I convert as many of those into sales qualified leads? So what I'm doing is I'm going to go through my leads on a daily, bi-daily, sometimes 3 or 4 times per day, depending on how many leads are generated, and then work to give them kind of like a spot check, like making sure that, they have corporate domains, they're, in the right areas, folks that like would be a right customer for Copper, and then putting those on email sequences, calling those to have a quick chat or qualify over email, like ensuring that they're using the right tools, that they're in fact looking for a CRM, not that they're looking for, maybe accounting software or project management software. And if I can find the right customers who are truly, looking for the right software, then we call those a sales qualified lead. And that's one of the key metrics which our team is judged on, is not judged on, but rated on, is how many of these marketing qualified leads we can convert into sales qualified leads. And then once they become a sales qualified lead, it's progressing those from, having that initial qualification conversation to make sure that they're going to be the right fit for the software, for our services, and then progressing those through the pipeline all the way to a win. And in that progression period is a sales accepted opportunity. And as long as we can continue to move these opportunities, in an efficient and mindful manner through the pipeline, then we're going to put ourselves in the right position to win as many customers as possible. So what we are focusing on is how can we, from a marketing qualified lead, how can we turn that into a sales qualified lead? And one of the key aspects of converting from a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead is, in our business, a lot around time to touch, because our customers, there's really no shortage of CRMs in this world. They might be looking at many different CRM solutions, but if we can get in touch with these folks early, have a meaningful conversation early on, then we're going to set ourselves apart from another provider who may take, a few hours, few days or longer to have that same type of interaction. And again, that goes back to what we talked about earlier, is how can we build trust and act as an advisor to our customers as much as possible. If a customer, reaches out to you asking, or like in this instance, kind of raising their hand saying like, hey, I need some help. Can you please help understand my business, or is Copper the right solution? If we can be very prompt and reply to them quickly and in a lens that we're framing it up that, hey, we're here to help you out. You said that you might want some CRM? Like, why is that? Or can we have a conversation quickly? That's just going to put ourselves in your organization, set them apart from the competition, providing that quick time to touch and that acceptance. And again, the same principles apply once you're engaged with that opportunity, is setting up the right appropriate next steps, not being, you know, too overbearing to want to close a deal right away or close them on that call. But you know, CRM, SaaS evaluations, those take time. People need to go through the proper steps, work within their own organization, run their evaluation on their time frame. So being as you know, cordial and accepting of that process and really acting as an advisor to help them go through those various steps. And then really, if you understand their process, you understand their requirements, at the end, there's really no need for that hard close or to be very, you know, assumptive in your close. It should just happen naturally. Like, you understand the requirements, you understand why they're looking for software, you've provided a solution that adds up. Like, it's almost like a math problem, you know, 2 + 2 = 4. If you know the beginning, like all the exponents of the equation, then the solution should be pretty straightforward and should be almost a natural ability. So get back to the key performance indicators. We're really focusing on, you know, obviously trying to convert as many as possible, move them through the pipeline and win as many. But really, the KPIs are a reflection, I believe, of the process and how you go about your work on a day-to-day basis.
That's really interesting, Jake, because kind of Ken earlier talked about this collaboration between marketing and sales and creating the right culture. And now here at this stage of the process, what we're doing is actually having a clear handoff between the marketing activity and what results that they're creating. And then when sales take over, and actually kind of how then sales can progress that. So it's not just the culture and the notion of collaboration, you're actually mapping this to your process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's funny because we obviously have to work very closely with marketing to give them feedback and let them know whether or not the leads they're generating are the right fit for Copper. Maybe we have to look at different channels in order to generate those leads. And we have, you know, we have monthly review calls where we go through like a list of for everyone on the team, the top 5 customers, what their personas are, reasons for their buying, maybe competitors that we won against. But I believe that collaboration, you know, also spills over from the sales side with the client. Like, we obviously need to have a very tight relationship in order for us to understand why the client is looking and what reasons are going to generate those. So I think the culture you set between marketing and sales then spills over from sales to the customer. And that's really what's going to set your sales organization apart, is having that clear collaboration relationship with your end client.
Wonderful. That's great. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a short break from the flow of the webinar, just to open it up to some questions from the audience. So you can use the chat functionality to ask any questions that you might have already. I can see Chris Blackwell's joined us from our partner. Hi, Chris. So Chris, I'm going to open it up to you first and put you on the spot. Have you got a question for Jake and Kent?
Yep. Hi, Jake. Hi, Kent. Thanks, Yanis. So I'm really interested in growth and organizations going through growth. And it seems that you guys are going through a lot of growth. And we've talked a lot about culture and strategy. But I guess in relation to culture, and I agree with everything you're saying about the customers and the different way that customers buy these days. I'm interested internally within culture, to what degree does ambition play a part in your growth, and how much is ambition part of your culture? So where you're going through growth, what are your ambitions as a business? Is that built into your culture? Is that part of what's driving your growth, or is it actually it's more about doing what's right for the customer and the growth takes care of itself?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one as a start, and Jake, feel free to chime in. I think that's a great point, Chris. And you know, taking a step back and thinking about, you know, from our perspective at Copper, one of our values, we have 4 core values. One of them is will to win. And I think, you know, as part of the company culture, it is important to have a level of ambition. If that's, you know, part of the, you know, every organization is different, but if that's part of what you want within the organization, I think it's a really, really valuable core component of the culture to help drive success. At the end of the day, for us, the way that I like to think about it is I want to make sure that everyone on our team has a very clear understanding of what their goals and objectives are and how they're going to be measured against those. And so that, whether it's in sales where it's a little bit easier to measure, or in other parts of the organization where it's potentially a little bit more qualitative in terms of the measurement, I just want to make sure that we have as tight of a definition around that as possible. Because then if we do, we can create a culture of collaboration. We can also create a culture of, that sort of will to win, so that, we do have folks that are hungry, that are really going after things in a big way. And so I don't think that those two are at odds with each other. I think that they actually really balance each other, but that's a great call out because we did not talk about ambition directly. I do think that, with any startup in particular is core to being successful, because you're going to show up a lot of days and there's not going to be a clear path forward, and you're going to have, ups and downs, and probably some more downs than ups early on. And you have to be able to work through those. You have to see the light at the end of the tunnel and be hungry.
Yeah, thank you. I love that will to win. Good phrase.
Absolutely. That's great. Thanks for that, Chris. And thanks for being our ScaleUp partner at Purpose-Led Performance. Great. And I've got a question from Anthony Adams as well. So Anthony, I don't know if you want to take yourself off mute and ask Kenton and Jake the question. If not, I can read it out. I'll read it out. So how have buying decisions changed, especially in the context of today's economy? How does your sales approach adapt to modern day buying behavior? So the economic backdrop. Yeah, Jake, if you can start.
Yeah. I've had, obviously lots of experience with this recently. No worries, make your tea. So I think, especially now, obviously cost is first and foremost or very front of mind for a lot of customers, but oftentimes you can really outweigh the costs of the solution based upon the value and the problems that you're going to help solve for. So it's more important now than ever to really set yourself apart in terms of the value you can help provide to the organization. And again, that really goes back to building trust and acting as a true advisor to your customers. If you can really put yourself in your client's shoes and understand the core business problems that they're hoping to try to solve for with whatever solution or service you're selling to them, that can just help set you aside more. I mean, like, of course, maybe a discount needs to be dropped, or you have to work with them a bit more on pricing now more than ever, but you're not going to lose an opportunity, I believe, if you can be that trusted advisor because you're 5% more expensive than the next solution, right? So even if you can still maintain your position as the advisor, you can really outweigh costs by the value and advice that you're bringing to that customer, and grow the lifetime value of that customer once we get out of this period and people are starting to grow, and the economy's back to a point of recency. Then we can really recapture that value you might have lost up front with a more competitive pricing.
Absolutely. I guess the buying decision itself hasn't necessarily changed. They're going to be more forensic on the objectives. So if it helps them grow as an organization, then it's a rational decision to want to invest. But I guess you've got to work harder to prove that you can meet that objective.
I've got one more thought here too, Giannis, to add, and I think the sort of value versus cost is a really important one. I do think that customers just right now, everyone's taking a look at costs, personal and professional, given the times. But the other thing I think that we've seen as a trend, a little bit irrespective of what's going on with COVID, but has sort of been highlighted by this time for me, is that customers expect a very different level of connected experience and shared understanding than they did even 6 months or a year ago. And what I mean by that, think about if you had a problem with something that you got delivered from Amazon, and you called in and you said, hey, my package didn't come. Your expectation is that whoever you talk to on the other end of that chat or that phone is going to have an understanding that you've bought 4 packages over the last year that have all come. You're a valued customer. Maybe you have an Amazon Kindle. Actually, famously, what Amazon did starting about 2-ish years ago. They found a way to really connect all of their experiences. And so one of the sort of things that I've been thinking about continuously with Copper is this sort of story about Amazon, where if you call in about a package and they notice you haven't downloaded the books that you had previously paid for on your Amazon Kindle, you'll have a customer service agent that actually says, "Hey, I'm so sorry you didn't get your package. We'll make sure that gets over there. By the way, I was going to refund you for this thing you're not using on your Amazon Kindle, totally separate product line." And you'll leave that call feeling like, wow, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to go back to Amazon, even though the reason that you called initially was because you didn't get a package that was delivered, right? So turning a poor experience into a very delightful experience for a customer, that type of thinking and that type of engagement is so critical today. In particular, because of everything going on, customers want to know they're taken care of. And I feel like that sort of ethos is a key part of the buying decision today, and it's a key part of your ongoing the health of your customers in an ongoing way. It's a big part of their expectations, and something that you can deliver by having access to a CRM like Copper, or just making sure that your processes are really nailed down and that your team is talking to each other. But as you grow, I just think making sure that you have a shared understanding across your organization of what your customers have experienced and where they're at with you in terms of their relationship, so that anyone who's getting on the phone with a customer has all of that at their fingertips and can respond effectively. And what you don't want to have happen is, if Jake was getting on the phone with a customer of ours that had been a customer for a year and maybe had an engagement with our support team 3 months ago, that Jake gets on the phone and says, "Hey, how can I help you?" And that's it. "Oh, I didn't realize you had already worked with us before." That would be not great. So I think that's another really important point that customers really expect right now.
And that's a really nice segue, Kent, because it comes back to kind of connecting up the dots to create those strong customer relationships. And I really like this quote, because it is about those relationships that you invest in now, but will in the long term drive sales and result in growth. Got a few more questions coming through, but what we're going to do is we're going to hold fire on the questions until the end of the webinar, and just kind of make sure that we cover all the points, but we will come to you and answer your questions. So this one I wanted to kind of start with you, Jake, because you're at the kind of coalface, you're at the front line, you're the one building these customer relationships in collaboration with Kent and the rest of the team. How do you go about doing that? We talk a lot about relationships. In theory, it's great, but in reality, what does that look like?
Yeah, like I might sound like a broken record at this point in the webinar, but again, it goes back to how can you establish yourself as a trusted advisor, and that oftentimes conflicts entirely with selling, right? So it goes back to understanding really the core reasons as to why your customer, or why this potential customer might be interested, and how you can help solve for that problem, or where your organization can help solve for this problem. Where it really relates to Copper is that because we're a SaaS business, we really need to retain the lifetime value of this customer, and either at a monthly or an annual conjunction, that Copper can, or that customer can cancel their subscription with Copper. And a lot of the upfront effort that went into acquiring that customer, from the marketing spend to my time being spent with that customer, support, onboarding, etc. If we can't retain that customer for a year, 2 years, like into the future, we're not going to be profitable, especially as it comes to retaining that customer. And so it's very, very important that we establish a positive relationship up front with this customer, understand their needs and objectives, so that way we can deliver a solution which helps solves for those needs and objectives. We retain the customer over the lifetime of the customer for several years, and that customer then becomes quickly profitable over the lifetime. But if we only have that customer for 3 months, or they get started, they might have had an okay experience with sales, gets transitioned to support. To your point, Kent, like if I get another lead in that was from the same organization, I call them up, say, "Hey, how can I help you? Hey, you were in touch with my CEO a couple of weeks ago. Are you not familiar with who we are as a customer?" That's going to quickly set us apart from being an organization that's solely focused on acquiring you for a quick and easy sale and then moving on to the next customer. So that is not going to set ourselves apart as a trusted advisor, and ultimately not lead to success for the business. And if we have those types of interactions for like a long period, then your organization probably won't be around for much longer. So if we can focus really our time and attention up front to understanding the most about the customer before we get into the selling of our product and solution, we're really going to set ourselves apart, acquire the right kind of customers. Like we mentioned earlier, not every single customer is going to be the right fit for Copper or for your organization. If you acquire the wrong customers, it's going to be kind of a death spiral in that regard. So we want to focus on the right customers, having a really, really tight understanding of why we're having these conversations, how we can help, and then providing a solution that's going to help direct those folks to success.
And Jake, how do you kind of take some of what customers want but you can't deliver right now and feed that back into your product team so they can kind of evolve the solution?
Yeah, so we have really tight feedback loops with our product team specifically. So, we use Slack as our internal communications tool. We have several different channels that are set up for product and engineering questions, for product feedback that relate to even specific features like new releases. Like we really recently just released a project management solution within Copper. We have weekly feedback reviews with these folks. So the culture aspect between sales and marketing, obviously can't just stop there. It's got to really, spill over into all the other aspects of the organizations. And another key area is relationship between sales or customer success with our product team. So we can really give them tight feedback as to what areas of our customers are delighted by, and maybe other areas of our product that we need to work on focusing and improving. So that way we have a chance of retaining and, renewing these customers and, increasing their lifetime value.
It's about, again, trying to foster that long-term relationship with the customer. And you touched on there kind of the different types of technology that can be used to kind of, foster these relationships. Kent, can you kind of elaborate on, how you can build the right tech stack within your organization and how technology plays a role within those relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I think we're in such an interesting place. It's a very personal passion for me around how technology can help foster relationships. I really enjoy helping our customers be successful and grow their businesses. It's one of the reasons why I love this sort of small to medium-sized business space, because these startups and scale-ups are just getting off the ground and figuring out how to make it work. But also I, as a sales leader at Copper, am able to use this tool to make sure that I'm as effective as possible in fostering my own relationships, and that, in the work that Jake and I do together, we can work hand in hand, even though I'm in San Francisco and he's in London, and we cross over maybe for an hour or two a day. So I think technology is critical to enabling these relationships at scale, full stop. I think you have to be thinking about how can you leverage technology at your organization, whether you're just a 1 or 2 person startup just getting going, or you're a company that's scaling and you've got teams of 10 or 20 or 30 sales professionals that are on your team and actually starting to grow your business. I think that technology helps in a number of ways. It can give you full visibility into where your prospects are at any point in time in the life cycle and what their engagement history has been with you, so that as you pick up the phone or as Jake's connecting with a prospect that has just signed up, he knows exactly what their history has been with Copper. Maybe they actually tested our solution months ago. We need to know about that. It also provides a platform for internal collaboration, right? So we're actually able to use Copper, again, not to put another plug, but we really enjoy using Copper because it has the ability to track everything, but also for us to collaborate. So Jake can mention me on a deal he's working, and when I get up in the morning, I'm able to see that. We're able to have a communication or conversation about it right away. And that goes for anyone at your organization who's able to then pick up that conversation and run with it. It also allows you to keep organized. So if you're the one at your organization that's really out there driving business, or you're a leader that's starting a startup and you're playing multiple roles and having to play the role of sales, you need to be able to keep yourself on top of the key projects, key work that you're doing related to the customers that you have. And so it really helps you also to do that. You can set reminders for yourself, see when you've last engaged with someone, or maybe search for someone that you haven't engaged with as recently. And so all of that becomes, I think, really important. But it is fun thinking about it, because I feel that selling is such a team sport. And that's what initially attracted me to Copper a couple of years ago, because I had been working within sales organizations at other companies in the tech space that were admittedly a little bit even larger than Copper is. But I think, I really feel strongly that client relationship management is critical to helping you grow your business. And it's a great way to be able to engage with prospects that are thinking through some of the same challenges that we've been thinking through, and finding solutions to those, and actually helping these customers of ours be successful in helping their own customers be successful is really rewarding. So yeah, that's where I go.
Really interesting. I think that what's clear is you haven't started with technology, and it's something we talk about a lot at Birmingham Tech, is the fact that actually technology is readily available. Kind of innovation is being created faster than ever before, but actually the best technology in the world isn't going to solve your kind of problems if you don't start with the culture, you don't start with your purpose, the people within your organization, making sure you've got the right processes in place that align to your goals. And then technology becomes the enablement part. So not technology for the sake of it, which we see a lot of organizations do, but actually really thinking through those critical touch points first, so that when technology is implemented, it works. So
Yeah.
we've got a bit of time now for Q&A. And Thomas, I know you had a question, so I'm going to come to you first so you can ask Kenton and Jake your question. You can just take yourself off mute, and
Hi there.
there we are.
My question, I'm working for a startup now in PPE, which is obviously a growing industry. How do you overcome the starting out bit where you've got a very limited reputation, but you're trying to get people to buy your services or products? How do you sort of overcome that hurdle?
Yeah, so just to make sure I understand the question, you're just trying, did you say the PPE space?
Yeah, PPE, yeah.
That's a great space. Jake's actually done some work recently there, and certainly timely. So the question is, how do you actually get out there and sell, knowing that your company just maybe is very young, doesn't have a brand in the market? Is that right?
Yeah, it's about 2.5 months old. So
that's great. It's a great question. I think a lot of startups are trying to struggle with that same issue. I have some thoughts, and Jake, you may have some too. For me, the process is actually very much the same. I think it really comes down to still making sure you have an understanding of who your target customer is, how you're going to reach them, and then once you do reach them, what's the message you're going to take? How can you add value to them within the times? And then how do you progress through to closing a deal? But I think that, the way that you have to think about it is a little bit more from scratch, if you will. And so I think what it comes down to is having a clear understanding of who you're going after. When it comes to channels, I would say get very prioritized. What are the 1 or 2 ways that you can reach a handful of those customers right now? And start small, because you're going to learn a lot from those engagements. If you can have 5 active conversations going, you're going to start to get a sense of whether this matters to them or not. And those can be sort of your initial customers. Once you've got a few customers that you're able to work with, then everything becomes a lot easier, because you can start to unlock some of the same customer type. Maybe you find out, hey, these organizations that have characteristics, X, Y, and Z make for really great customers of, our stuff. Or maybe we know, hey, we've got this industry's work, but these couple don't. And as you learn, you can continue to get more refined. But I would say focus is really the key. You don't have to have, as you're getting up and running, a fully built out social strategy and campaigns running on 4 or 5 different channels, and events that you're attending virtually or otherwise, and maybe some sponsorships. You don't have to do it all. You just have to figure out, how can I get in touch with a few customers that fit the mold that I think is going to be successful for us, and I think I have an opportunity to add value for. And I would say start there. Don't overcomplicate it. And then as you grow, you can continue to layer on new ideas as you iterate. But I would say that's the getting tight on your ICP, tight on the 1 or 2 ways you can get in touch with some folks that fit that, and then building from there.
Yeah, I kind of have a unique perspective on this question as well, because when I joined Copper about 5 years ago, we were very much a very small startup. I think it was one of the first 20 or some odd hires at Copper. And we got posed this question all the time, like, how long have you been in the market? I've never heard of Copper before. How long you guys been around, et cetera. And to Ken's point, we just really focused in on a small subset of these customers that we've acquired and been successful with in the past. And it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you focus in on that small number of customers, that very like-minded customer, and you become more and more successful in that segment, it just leads to greater success. And then, you know, you'll have your brand, you'll have your reputation, and you'll have that pool of customers that you can fall back on and say, well, hey, even though we haven't been around for very long, we've been very successful in this segment, just like you know, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, and we've made them very successful in the past. So, well, you know, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, great insight from you both there. And just I'm going to add one more thing, just given my background as a marketeer. Although your brand may not have reputation and equity from day one, you have. So actually kind of utilize your personal brand and the trust that you've built up to engage with those relationships as well. So that's where you should just start really with your personal brand. So I've got another question here from Rupinder. So I'm going to read this question out just for the sake of time. How much emphasis does Copper place on using first versus third-party intent data for its marketing strategies?
I'm probably best suited to answer this one, although I will qualify it by saying I lead our sales organization. We do have a marketing leader that is more responsible for this. But increasingly, we're thinking about how to leverage third-party intent data more and more. I think this is going to depend where you are in your maturity scale, both how much data you have access to individually, but also what level of sort of fine tuning and growth is required. And it's also going to depend on the sales cycle and types of customers that you're involved with. If you're in a high velocity sales motion where you have smaller deal sizes, but you know you're working your way up towards hundreds and thousands of customers, then it becomes more important for you to think about third-party intent data and online campaign, lead generation, things of that sort. I think it's less important as you're just getting started to think about that, because you're not quite at the level where you're crisp in terms of who you're targeting and you know exactly what you need to go after. But you know, we are, as a company, Copper is starting to explore it, because for us, we are in a relatively high velocity sales motion. We have a very competitive landscape. And while we offer a very differentiated solution in that space, given our tight partnership with Google as the only recommended CRM for G Suite, and the native integrations we have there, which are really second to none. And I think you know the build outs that we've done on our deal management and project management flows are quite separate. We still run into the challenge that when a prospect is thinking about CRM and they haven't necessarily figured out exactly what they want, that world is very big. And so we would love to be able to understand when our prospects are also going and checking out potential competitors, or when they're doing different things on the web. And that's really where intent data comes into play. So we are starting to think about growth strategies and campaign development around that, but I would say we're very nascent in it. And it's taken us, the better part of now 6 years that we've been in market to start to actually work towards that. So I would say that probably comes, just to take a step back and think about it from the perspective of startups and scale-ups, that comes probably towards the more mature end of your business, thinking about growth and how we actually optimize for growth once we have the foundation in place and understand who we're going after, how our sales motion and marketing motions work, which channels we're really focused on, how we actually serve our customers once we close those deals. Those are all really important before you actually start to think about what I would classify as sort of growth marketing.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's a whole other world, isn't it? Kind of how data kind of from lots of different sources can help shape the strategy of the organization. So thanks for that, Kent. I've got time for one more question, and this one's from Lubna. She wants to know, how do you cater for a very small organization versus a large or mid organization that you're engaging with, and how do you offer the same service? Because you might have one organization with one person, one with 500 people. There's obviously different value for you as an organization. How do you go about kind of delivering the same service? Yeah, this is a great question. And Jake, feel free to chime in if you have some thoughts here, because
you work with organizations that run the gamut in terms of their sizes. I think there's a couple points I'll make here. The first is, we talked about the importance of setting up your strategy, and in doing so, setting up your go-to-market blueprint, I'll call it. It's almost, the way to think about this is a process flow for how prospects work with your company at every stage in terms of the life cycle, from the moment that they see your name on a piece of paper or on a website or what have you, however they engage with your company, to all of the engagements they'll have with marketing, visiting your website, et cetera, to actually then becoming a customer, and a valued customer and a growing customer of your platform, and the folks that they talk to at the same time. For us, what we've done is we've taken a view that the type of business we want to create, the culture we want to establish, and the strategy we want to build that on top of, is that we want to provide as best of service as we can to our entire customer base, and we are very focused on small to medium-sized businesses. And so it becomes critical for us to find ways to make sure that we do enable them to be successful in the same ways that we would some of our larger customers that have hundreds or thousands of seats. And so for us, we've structured our process in that way, right? So when you think about the way that our customer success team works, and this is just an example, but rather than say we're going to have one customer success agent or representative that works with just a handful of customers, instead, we said, well, we have a lot of customers. They're all different sizes and they need help at different times. And so we want to create a more flexible customer success pathway that allows our customers to schedule time and get advice from whoever on our customer success team is either A, available, or B, the domain expert in terms of the area that they want support on. And so if a customer has questions on how to build a specific report, or how to build some sort of a workflow automation, or they just want to take a chance to step back and make sure that they've set up the system correctly because they're in real estate or they're an agency and they want to figure out what does that really mean within the context of Copper. We want to be able to make sure that support is there and accessible. So we've created a more flexible structure that allows us to service our customers, and particularly our smaller customers, in a way that many of our competitors are not structured to do. So I think that's one example of how we think about it. It comes down to making sure that if that's what your objective is and the type of company you want to create, that you structure your sort of strategy, your support model in that way, and that you have a culture that really prioritizes it. Because I can tell you there are a lot of both our competitors, but other companies out there in every space that don't take that same approach. They may say, well, 80-90% of our revenue comes from our largest 5 accounts. And if you're not in those accounts, then we really don't care. And if that's the type of business that you want to create, which in some cases that may make sense, that's totally fine too. But I think that hasn't been our approach. Our approach has really been to fight for the smaller players. And so we really enjoy working with startups and scale-ups. That's the type of business we feel we can really add value to. And so that's how we've approached it.
And I think it's really timely, because we've got an organization here in Birmingham who, until a couple of, 3 or 4 years ago, were kind of one person with his grandma's sewing machine, creating a brand, but went on to become Gymshark, which as of the weekend is now $1 billion organization. So it just goes to show, if you kind of really focus on those small organizations and give them a good service, you never know where they may end up. So great advice there. And Jake, anything quickly to add at the end of that? I think you're on mute, Jake.
Thank you. I was going to tag on to what Kent said. In terms of our prioritization and standardization, is that we really want to focus on making all of our customers as successful as possible. And to that point, we need to standardize in the types of services we provide to our customers. So we're going to pull together a lot of resources so that even if you're a very small customer, you still have access to experts in their particular domain, where it's like custom reporting, some of our workflow automation features, that just because you're a single user that's on a monthly subscription, you still have access to those services and that expertise regardless of your size. So we were trying to prioritize a strategy around our smallest customers to enable them to be successful. So that way, in the instance where if they're very small to start, they can quickly grow and scale should their organization, require that. So I think it's twofold: standardization of how we're going to provide these types of services, and then prioritizing around a customer profile.
That's great. Thanks, Jake. And I know, Jake, you're going to actually offer more help to people that have been on this webinar, but also people that receive a recording as well. So what we're going to do after the webinar is send out an email with a recording. It will also include a link to be able to book some time with Jake, so he can kind of talk to you about your specific challenges, objectives, and how Jake might be able to help you set up your sales environment in the right way and build those long-term relationships. And the other thing that will be on the email as well is an ebook that I know Copper have put together, which goes into more detail on some of the topics we've covered today, again, about fostering and developing those long-term valuable relationships. So all that's left for me to say is to thank Jake and Kent for your time today. And Kent, thanks for getting up at the crack of dawn again to take part in this. And thank you to everyone that's been a part of this webinar as well, for those that have asked questions, and for those of you that have taken time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this, and to our partners and Purpose-Led Performance, and also NatWest. So have a great day, everyone. Thanks again for being a part of it, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you.